eu fiquei alucinado, visitando as obras do Banksy por todo lado. E esse muro que eu consegui tinha essa obra e moradores ou pessoas que estavam passando ali vandalizaram essa obra do Banksy, né? Então a obra tinha sido removida. E logo na sequência eu entrei com o meu trabalho. E aí as pessoas achavam que eu tinha apagado a obra do Banksy. Então também gerou uma polêmica, tipo, no meu segundo trabalho internacional, todo mundo falando que eu tinha removido uma obra do Banksy, saiu matérias, sai Banksy, entra Kobra, tipo assim, quem sou eu para poder apagar uma obra do Banksy? São Paulo e Nova York tem total conexão. São Paulo porque eu comecei a pintar aqui, Nova York porque eu tinha influência dos artistas de lá. Então sempre tive essa ideia de pintar algo lá.
Welcome back to My Harlem Portraits, the special edition about the Punta del Este Film Festival, the ARCA Film Festival, which is being held in the MACA Museum. And we are here with LINA CHAMIE, who is the director of an amazing movie we just saw about KOBRA, the street artist who is from São Paulo, Brazil, but who painted many murals in New York. Welcome to My Harlem Portraits, Nina.
My pleasure. Thank you for the interview.
Your film is an amazing portrait of Kobra. Tell us about him and why you decided to do this movie.
Well, Kobra Self-Portrait is a very intimate film. I like to call it like that. Because it is basically a film about the person, about who is Eduardo Kobra, where does he come from, his childhood, the difficulties he had being raised at the outskirts of São Paulo, and so it's a very delicate film. It's a film about this guy. He's a shy guy, you know.
Yes.
And I try to understand the person so that I can understand his work, you know. I think that every work of art, and street art is art.
Absolutely.
Even though it's on the streets, it could be in a museum. That's something he always says, you know, art is art, independent from where it is. To understand his art, I think it's very important, or to understand each artist, I think it's very important to understand the person. Because, as I was saying, every work of art comes from the experience of that person that shapes his view of the world, his message. Everything comes from your inner truth. So it's an intimate film on that sense. It's a film about who is this guy? Why does he paint what he's painting? You know, that was the starting point.
And you showed it very clearly, because the message that he gives gets more and more political and social as he grows older. And you can see it in his paintings. And he told you something very interesting, that he started to paint when he was with his father. And his father was a tapissier, and he was looking at the material that his father was using. So tell me about that, because that's what the colors come from.
Yeah, his relationship with his father is very important. He actually doesn't tell that, but the film shows this. He talks about his father as a very simple guy who didn't study, but he says he was an artist, even though he didn't know it. You know, he was a worker, a guy who, as you said, worked as a tapissier to earn a living. But Kobra sees his father as an artist. At the same time, Kobra had a very hard time with his father, you know, because his father didn't support him, and Kobra felt very alone and abandoned by his family, and this was very tough on him. But on the film, we understand that the main pattern of Kobra's work comes from the patterns that his father worked on the sofas. You know, the way his father used to work, and Kobra as a little boy used to watch, remained on him, which brings us back to what I was saying before. Every work of art comes from our experience of life, you know. So the film shows this link between his father's work as a tapissier and Kobra type of painting, which made him very famous, actually, because the pattern and the colors are his main characteristic. And it comes from his father. And one beautiful thing is that Kobra understood that watching the film.
Wow,
because he doesn't phrase that something like my work came from the visits I used to do with my father to the clients. No. But when I was editing, this is a funny story, I never told anybody. When I edited the film, and when I was editing, there was a moment when Kobra was talking about his father, and he used the term in Portuguese, captonné.
Capitoné, yes.
And I have to tell you the truth. At the editing room, I was with my assistant, and I said, but what is captonné? I didn't know. Then I Google it, and I see the patterns.
Yes.
You know, I understood that. I said, wow, but look at this. This is his work.
Yes.
So to me, it was a revelation. You know? And then I'm editing the film, and I make the sense. I make this comparison directly.
Yes.
I compare the pattern Kobra is using all over his murals with the captonné, you know, the work of his father. And that becomes a very clear thing. It's obvious that it came from his father. His style came from his father. And so that is on the film, but Kobra doesn't say it. And I discover it by my ignorance also of the term captone and the incredible, discovery at Google that captone is this pattern.
Yes.
That's something that at the end is very structural and important for the narrative. Because the
Absolutely.
film is based on his childhood and the difficulties he had being trying to be accepted as an artist, as a person, firstly by his father. And at the end of the film, the whole narrative is for us at the end of the film, together with Kobra, to re-signify this relationship. To understand that actually he did have a father, maybe not loving on his terms, but a father that shaped
his art,
his art, his character, because this coming to terms with his father happens when he becomes a father.
That's
so
right.
Fatherhood shows him a relationship that up to then he did not understand. So it's a very important theme on the film.
And also towards the end of the movie, he talks about how he reunited and he pardoned, he felt okay with his father and his father pardoned him towards the end when his father was sick also. So that is also very moving. This was a very moving movie. Tell me a little bit about the first time that he got a break, because he was invited to paint in the big fair in São Paulo. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we used to have a big fair called Play Center, with many places inside the park.
Carousels and
all the
all kind of crazy stuff.
How do you call the
Ottovolante in Italian? I don't know in English.
Ottovolante is
Russian mountains.
Russian mountains. That's it. And he became an artist after some passages. At the beginning, he was just tagging, which is illegal. And you have to run from policemen, you do it illegally on the streets, and it's very dangerous, and you hang out with people who steal cars and do drugs, and
steal the paint.
And steal, exactly, and paint over your tag, and then you have fights, and After that, he starts to do graffiti, much inspired by the graffiti in the 80s in New York. And by the end, he's doing big murals, right? But all of this, it happens in a very progressive way, And when you said before, that in the introduction, at one point he becomes aware of the importance of the message. It has to do with this coming from this underground, to the mainstream, and being at the mainstream and being at the streets, passing a good message. He's very worried about that. But I think that was not your question. What was your question?
No, my question was that you answered my question.
Yeah,
that was when he got his break. Right?
Yeah, well, the break is that was the question. Thank you. The break happens when he's coming out of the tagging, doing some graffiti, for money, and a guy invites him to do graffiti at the park.
Exactly.
That's where we were. And then he finds it very strange at first, But then he realizes it's the first time in his life. He's a young guy. He has 17. He's a 17-year-old guy. He realizes that was the first time someone wanted to pay him to do what he loves to do. And then he understands this is a break. And he does those paintings at the park, the Play Center Park, the best way he can. He doesn't go home to sleep. He sleeps on the park, and he gives it everything. Like, I'm gonna do the best I can because this is a break. He has this conscious.
Yeah, he
and
realizes
in
that.
fact, it is the first break. And from then on, it continues to be a big struggle. He had many problems, health problems, depression problems, but he understood something.
Sleepless. He couldn't
has
sleep at all.
all his life. You know, he still has it. He doesn't sleep. He has a very fragile health, but he understood that there's a break there, so he has to give everything. And from then on, he's in a very kind of rapid ascension. You know, he starts painting more, and then he's recognized by his artistry, and then he starts getting invitations. Everything in São Paulo.
For the moment.
For the moment, yeah. Then he goes all over the world, but he starts in São Paulo.
Yes.
It's his work in São Paulo that leads him to other places, international jobs and things like that.
And he has many, many murals in New York. I think, how
more
many
than
did you say?
30 murals in New York. He has more than 50 murals at the States, the United States. He's painted in more than 30 countries all over the world. He just painted now UN's mural main wall at the front of UN. He painted, he's the first street artist to paint at Disney World. He just did that last month. So he's painting all over, but he never loses his humility. He's a very down-to-earth guy, and sometimes he might not be commissioned, but he sees a wall and he wants to do something. He goes there, gets the license, and does it by himself.
He wants to give back.
He's always thinking about the message. He's always thinking about the best thing he could do to tell something important to somebody.
And helping the people to live in a better world, in a more beautiful world.
He has many ideals. He speaks against racism very strongly, against arms, guns, you know. He talks about inclusion, you know, diversity, about women and their place in the world. He defends many ideals, and he's very clear about that, very strong-minded. He's against animal mistreating, cruelty. He has many important messages that he's always concerned about and working to put it on the streets.
And that's what I saw in the first image that you gave of his mural. There were portraits of Gandhi, of Mandela, of Martin Luther King, and a couple of others. And that was so beautiful, always with that pattern, the check pattern, and colorful, but their faces coming out.
He calls himself a peace activist. He's
And
very concerned about peace as a way of living, surviving, you know, and in a world that is more and more violent with wars, and you know, we need people like him. And he's very concerned about nature, conservation, the indigenous people in Brazil, all over the world. Anyways, he's very conscious of his role as as someone who can pass a message,
Yes.
on the streets for many people, because he gets to many people. His
Exactly.
work
He has a very large and wide audience, and he's speaking to this audience, giving a real message and not just.
Yes.
This is what was really fantastic about your movie, that you show that, and that you showed so much of his art, which is really, really beautiful. And then there was an image that, for an Italian, is very touching and amazing, because I think he's the only one, tell us, who ever painted. Carrara. He painted in the cave in Carrara.
Wonderful, yeah.
Beautiful, a beautiful image of David of Donatello.
On the stone and in Carrara. That's marvelous. That's super. It's beyond a mural in that case, because the place and the whole thing is very meaningful.
Fantastic. And your connection with New York is very fundamental also, because you studied in NYU, right? And then you took a master in the Manhattan School of Music.
Yeah, this film was really something very special to me. I'm very grateful to Kobra for his generosity and courage, letting me do the film and tell his story. And there are this magic coincidence,
yes.
Because for Kobra, New York is very important. He was inspired by Basquiat, Keith Haring, all the street movement in New York changed his life, And I was there exactly at that moment, because I'm an alumni from NYU, and I studied in the 80s. When this was all happening. So those subway cars,
yes,
the
I
trains,
remember too.
I took them to go to school, and they were all painted. And I always found it incredible, To me, that was beautiful, was beauty. But there was a great dispute,
Absolutely.
Anyways.
And many people went to jail for doing that.
Exactly. And there's a wonderful film which I show some parts of it. It's a classic film about this style wars.
Yes.
Because it's this moment in New York, and I was there. So when this film came to me, there were all those elements, that fascinated me. And for me to be able to kind of travel back
to those
times, which were probably the happiest years of my life when I was a student in New York at Manhattan. It's just wonderful, something that only cinema can do, only films can do, a dream come true, that you have this chance to revisit, to go back.
Parts of your life.
Yeah.
And it shows in the movie, your enthusiasm, your love for it shows in the movie. And it's funny because I also came to New York for the first time at the end of the 80s. And those subways all written down, and I remember them. And I had many friends who were graffiti artists and who were going into fights with other people who were painting on top of their paint. So this brought back memories for me too, and it's beautiful. But I love what he does. I mean, his murals are just art, pure art. So what do you think about this art where we are in the MACA Museum that is welcoming this film festival?
This is an amazing place. I didn't know. It's just fantastic. And the idea of the festival is also very fortunate. Making a festival of films about art and artists in this place. Just great. We had a wonderful screening outdoor, and it's really wonderful, very appropriate.
And you came from Brazil, especially for the screening
yes,
of the movie.
yes, and it was worth it.
Definitely
Very nice.
worth it. I just also came from Italy for this film
No, it's very,
festival.
very, very special. I wish all the luck for this festival that they are able to maintain it. You know,
Yes.
because it's the second edition. Let's hope for many more.
And Pablo Chugari is the anfitrione, the host who's hosting us, who's giving us this wonderful place to be in, this ARCA, as he says.
Yes.
And Mercedes Sades, the director of the festival, she has done something really amazing. So we are very thankful. And that's why, being in this beautiful place with this incredible artist, I wanted to bring it to my viewers in New York and everywhere else. They need to know and see this stuff. So this is why we're here.
Wonderful.
And what's next for you?
Well, I do fiction. I have some projects I'm starting. They're in different stages. You know, filmmakers have to do many things at the
Yes.
same time. You have to have more than one project always, you know. And I'm writing now my new film, which will be a fiction film for next year.
About?
Youngsters,
Oh,
yes.
that's interesting.
About it's a coming
Coming
of
of
age
age.
film, and about the discoveries one has at those crucial moments in your life, pre-adolescent, you know, youngsters.
Very important.
And they're coming of age.
Adolescents went through horrible
With
years.
the pandemic.
The people who are 17, 18, 19 now, they really went through so much, and that we need to see things like that. So
Yeah.
we are going to talk again then when
Hopefully.
your next movie comes
Yes.
out.
Yes.
I want to have an interview with you about that.
Done.
Okay?
It's a deal.
Thank you for your precious time. Thank you for your precious time. And thank you to our viewers for being with us again.
Se eu não pintar, significa morrer. Eu não sou feliz fazendo outra coisa. Os meus cadernos eram todos cheios de desenhos. Eu só queria pintar e desenhar. Para a sociedade, de uma forma geral, sempre alguém ia me chamar de vagabundo. Eu tive que encontrar maneiras de ser autossuficiente. Quando eu vejo as ruas, para mim é o meu ateliê. Porque não há diferença entre uma obra que é feita no museu, numa galeria, numa tela, num muro. Tudo é arte. O que apareceu mais no meu trabalho foi a questão das formas e das cores. Mas eu tenho uma busca muito mais intensa do que isso. Por trás do que eu tô pintando, tem algo que eu quero dizer, tem alguma mensagem, tem histórias, que também é uma busca interior minha. Eu vi o racismo, eu vivenciei a questão do preconceito. Prefiro muito mais ser visto através dos meus desenhos. Isso já é o meu autorretrato.